This audio was brought to you by listeners like you. Learn more after the audio. Oh, you're talking to me? Well, hello to you too then, stranger. Forgive me, I'm not used to people coming up to me, especially not ones this attractive. You're not from around here, are you? Otherwise, I'm sure I would have noticed you before. And, no offense, but you don't really fit in with the crowd. The folks here tend to have some unique qualities. Very much stay to themselves. They can sense an outsider from miles away, so you best be careful. Oh, so this is your hometown. I see. After fleeing the nest, you've come back for a brief visit. Somebody your age won't find much around these parts. Everyone ends up moving to the bigger cities once they're old enough, and only come back every now and again. Well, that's the fate of a small town. But I think the people here like it that way. Nothing changes, and the elders still get to set the rules. And stays quiet, homogeneous, and nobody cares to speak up against the choices made. Most rural towns share a similar mindset in that regard. They prefer their secluded community, and keeping things as they are. Humans tend to be terrified of change after all. They always have been. Funny, isn't it? How people like to think they've gotten so far, developed and incorporated so many new things into society. But still, deep down, it's exactly the same being, driven by the same motivators, sharing the same fears. People like to consider themselves complex. I suppose they are in some ways. But how deep do you have to dig to find the same core within everyone? The same urges, needs, and desires. Their yearning for love, for approval. Their hunger and thirst. Their fear and confidence. Still, they're so quick to judge, to ignore somebody in need, because they don't deem that person worthy of help. Because surely, if they'd worked harder, if they'd been better, they wouldn't be in such bad situations, would they? Oddly enough, some use that same metric for themselves, too. Maybe they want to believe that life is fair, that people get what they deserve, and that in the end, there will be some kind of reward or punishment for their behavior. Randomness is a terrifying thought, isn't it? The idea that nothing actually matters. It's much easier to believe that there's a reason, a good and a bad, a choice that makes a difference. People need that, in a way, because it wouldn't be fair to see evil succeed, to see a good person struggle. What would be the point of being good in a world like that? What would be the point in trying? Humanity truly is fascinating. So simplistic, yet so complicated. In a way, they remind me of ants. hustling and bustling all about, each trying to contribute to the colony, whilst attempting to keep themselves alive. They fear to look further than the comfort of their home, the warmth of familiarity. But sometimes, they get lost. They need one another, but hunger and yearning for more drives them out into the wilderness, where they can't care for themselves anymore, where they end up being exposed to the elements, to predators, all alone with no sense of self. Or, perhaps if they're lucky, they stumble into a new colony. I suppose everyone is searching for something, ants and humans alike, but the question is, what? How about you, stranger? What is it you're looking to find? You too appear a bit lost within yourself, as though you don't really know what it is you want. It's clear you're craving something. Company, perhaps. Love. Greatness. A distraction. Punishment. When you think about it, how many others might feel exactly the way you do? People always seem to think their struggles are unique, as though nobody would ever be able to understand them. You wouldn't believe just how many have had near identical experiences. The same feeling of lacking something. The same words of discouragement whispered in their head. The same nightmares keeping them awake. Humans are quite interesting creatures. Somehow, they're all so similar, and yet, they are all entirely different. Though, perhaps they're not as unique as they'd like to think. After all, they carry nearly all of their ancestors within them, in one way or another. Not only in appearance, many behaviors are learned too. So, perhaps without even realizing it, they laugh the way their great-great-grandmother did, or hold a pen the way a distant relative in the 19th century used to. Your preferences, your taste, the way you see the world, the way you walk, the way you dress, your favorite scent, your hair color and texture, even every single cone and speck within your eyes. All of those things aren't uniquely yours. And if you were introduced to every person in your bloodline, you'd be surprised just how many of your traits you would find mirrored in others. Still, there's probably nobody who is exactly like you. Is that what makes you different? The fact that others only have pieces of the beautiful puzzle that you are? Or does it make you less unique, since you are just a composition of everyone who ever came before you? If you think about it, your entire being is a story. A love letter to people long gone. Or perhaps a biography of pain and mistreatment. You might never know. All those memories are lost after all, and there is no way of retrieving them. We don't have the ability to go back in time and see for ourselves, to ask those who have passed. That kind of power is not for us, and even if it was, people might only abuse it. On a similar note, though, I wonder, if you were a god, what would you do with that influence? Would you destroy what is left of humanity? Would you try and guide them towards a better world? Or would you simply watch, study them, see what they come up with on their own, and just how much of their success and failures they attribute to you? Would you play favorites, rile them up against one another, have them fight for your entertainment? Or would you end world hunger, bring peace upon humanity? A silly little hypothetical, but you'd be surprised by how many different answers I've gotten. Perhaps it says something about how you grew up, or about your own desires. Maybe it's a reflection of what you believe you deserve, or how you see those around you. Your empathy, your deepest fears, your strongest emotions. Especially since you aren't partaking, merely an observer, able to influence outcomes and probabilities, give blessings, and curse those you deem unworthy. A strange thought, isn't it? An uncomfortable thing to consider. It raises the question of how much control a god would have, how much free will a person is really given. People like to think their thoughts and choices are their own, that they have control over what they do. But I suppose we may never know for sure. I'm beginning to like you, stranger. You have an honest stance that most others lack. You believe in the good in people. Maybe that's why you came to me. Because you think you can fix whatever it is you deem broken. Or perhaps my mystery got your attention. I don't think I'm fixable anymore. Though, I have to admit, the company is nice. I tend to spend most nights alone. I have, for a very long time. Always a stranger, hopping from one town to the next, never quite fitting in anywhere. And I've never dared to move to a bigger city. They tend to be too much for me. Too many irritating lights, and colors, and smells, and noises. All of that. And I'd miss being able to see the night sky. The stars still give me a sense of comfort, a feeling of belonging that I've never felt anywhere else. I'm not quite sure why I'm telling you all this, to be honest. I guess that's just what happens when you approach a lonely drunk. They talk. A tradition that has been upheld for centuries. But in the end, it doesn't matter what I tell you. You too will forget about me. Eventually. Whether that be tomorrow or in a year, I'll mean nothing in the trajectory of your life. And the next time you visit here, I'll probably be gone already. Because somebody like me can only ever stay for so long without being noticed. And an outsider will only be tolerated for a certain amount of time. I suppose, in a way, I'm running away from myself, still seeking the comfort of people, attempting to escape the loneliness, even though I never quite managed to find that. You've been the first person to talk to me in many years, and I'd like to thank you for that. I don't understand why you did it, but not many souls have your purity and curiosity. In a way, you remind me of somebody. Your presence feels vaguely familiar, like the melody of a song I'd almost forgotten. Forget I said anything. Some things are best left in the past, don't you agree? You know, we're not so different, you and I. I guess I've become just another person, a simple being yearning for approval, for the company of another soul, even if they don't understand. It's difficult, but I imagine you know the feeling as well as I. In the end, even a fallen god is nothing but another human, for the most part. Enough of that, though. I'd rather not take up any more of your time. You have so little. Make it count, stranger. You might just be able to do something with it. You again. I met you at the pub the other night, didn't I? I told you a face like yours stands out from the masses. Did you come to watch the meteor shower? I see. I can leave if you prefer being alone up here. Are you sure? You're quite daring, stranger. How very unusual. But if you don't mind, I'll gladly keep you company. Normally, this place is fairly quiet. A few teenage couples every now and again, but they don't tend to stay long. It's a shame, really. Such a stunning view of the night sky is rare these days. Light pollution swallowed most of that beauty a while ago. Still, the stars are mesmerizing from up here, aren't they? Back in the day, people believed they were the souls of the deceased, watching over their relatives at night, and that the moon was the one guarding them all. A shooting star would be a soul passing from life to death, or the other way around. That belief has held up for a long time, and can still be found in some modern religions. Fascinating, isn't it? That reminds me of a story. Would you be willing to hear it? It'll still be a little while before the meteor shower reaches its height, so we might as well pass the time a bit. It's an old legend, stemming from an ancient belief. A story of two gods in a curious young world. It goes like this. Once upon a time, very, very long ago, before things had names, and when people were nothing but a vague whisper of the future, there were two siblings, one heart and one soul. Twins, you could call them, had they been born to a mother of flesh. The universe had birthed them, raised them alongside what would eventually become the first humans. And so they watched the earth, one during the day, the other at night. They were the sun and the moon, the brightest lights that fell upon the only populated planet at the time. The only planet that mattered to them. It was said that the sky was their home. A broad universe could have been explored, but they chose to stay. They deemed that the people and the world needed their light. Long ago, they had frolicked through the galaxies, chasing one another, but they had since grown and matured, starting to take their tasks more seriously. And once the first forefather of humankind stood upright, their rhythm had steadied. Days and nights had become reliable, and slowly the brothers grew apart, only getting to see one another at rare occasions, such as solar eclipses, and whenever the moon would grow lonely and visit the sky during the day. I'm sure you've seen it before. But they were always close at heart. They loved one another, cared deeply about their bond, about their people. One heart, one soul, pulsing in unison. Humanity grew to worship these gods, the safety they offered, the blessings they brought. They were grateful, lived and died in harmony, to be reborn once their time had come, to live again. The god of the moon shepherded the souls of the dead within the night sky. They were the stars, shining brightly until he sent them back down to earth. In their time, the sky was littered with beautiful specks of light, a sight no modern human could even begin to imagine. It's a bit funny if you think about it. Nowadays, many people associate darkness with evil. Most gods of winter and snow are considered cruel, and the only offerings they receive are a bargain for peace. Back then, the god of the moon was respected and loved. The people understood that every night was necessary to rest, that during winter, plants could regain their energy to feed humans once more. He was the deity of replenishing, reviving, and resting, of the moon, the cold, and the night. And the people prayed to him, not to be kind to them, or to hold himself back and keep them alive. No, they prayed to rest well, prayed for him to protect all the plants, cover them under his blanket of snow so that they could grow back even stronger, prayed for the animals to be slow and the food to be plenty. He was the god of death, as well as revival. They prayed for him to guide the deceased to safety, so that they may rest and come back, wiser, better, and stronger than before. Every death, every grave, every nightfall was a celebration in his name. Offerings were burned, gifts were exchanged, a last honor bestowed upon the dead. His brother, on the other hand, was prayed to at every birth, every sunrise, before every hunt, and every meal. He was the god of light, growth, and fire. He was the warm summers that brought ripe fruit, the bright days of hunting and dancing. He was the middle, life and physical growth, the day, the warmth, and the energy. The god of the moon was everything around that, the spiritual and unseen side of things, yet no less worshipped. He was the life beyond, all that came before and after. They were complementary, and everyone knew that. One guarded during the day, the other at night. One guided them in life, the other in death. Wisdom, growth, development, and return. A steady cycle. And so it went for a few hundred years. The first gods, the only ones for a little while. Though, eventually, the god of the moon began to grow lonelier, guarding during nighttime when most were asleep, watching them, all alone. I do believe they had been growing apart then, already, considering they would only meet so rarely. Yet still they were brothers. Despite everything, they were a team, connected by the blood of the universe within their holy veins. The only beings that could understand one another's troubles. But it went as it had to, as most other religions have. They too came to an end, eventually. A new group of people had moved on to their native lands and brought different, newer gods with them, much more radical. They captured the siblings' followers and gave them a single choice: convert or die. For they believed in gods of war, blood, and brutality. And so the brothers had to watch as their loyal people were slaughtered, one by one. Watch the last bit of faith fall from their own over the years. They were unable to interfere, to save their people. The gods tried to fight it, but even they could only do so much. Both of them were filled with horror. They didn't know what would happen next. But the brother of the moon refused to leave their last believers behind. But I think the brother of the sun was scared, worried they would disappear. And so he left, while the moon stayed behind, watching over the last few that had faith. The brother of the sun then decided to build himself a new life, a new identity. And as the last few sparks of hope died, the god of the moon fell to the earth, found himself in a human body, though that alone wouldn't have been an issue for him. He could have lived and died among the people he once loved, despite their lack of belief in him. But as time passed, the god did not age. He could not die. The god of the moon was damned to walk these crumbling paths until they fall apart, and then some more. Watch societies rise and fall around him, experience every pain of the world without ever feeling relief. And for what? To learn, to repent, to suffer. He could not understand what he had done to their mother universe to deserve such torment. Walking throughout the world for thousands of years, alone. About 70,000 to be precise. But as time went on, he could not help but grow distant. After a couple millennia, he went to visit the churches of his brother's new followers. He tried praying to their god, but did not get an answer. Though most of them never did, to be fair. He even read some of their scriptures, but, well, never mind. For the rest of eternity, the god of the moon was cursed to wander the earth, watching what had become of his once beloved humans. Of course, they did not recognize him. He was but another stranger to them. And, despite so desperately wanting to, he never felt the presence of his brother again, either. So, he was left stranded in the mortal realm, unable to die, unable to help, unwilling to pick up a new face, stuck for eternity, left to wonder why his brother would just abandon him, all alone for the first time in his existence. That's how it often is, isn't it? Believing that you know a person, that you can trust them, until something happens and they change. I don't believe the god of the sun meant any harm to his brother, but still, I fail to understand why he never came back. Maybe he found a way to die. Though, ultimately, death isn't really an option for a fallen god, even if they walk the earth in a human form. That's because a form is all it is, a disguise. They're not human, and never will be. It's a lonely endeavor, and that's what one gets for being forgotten. His brother, on the other hand, might still have power. Maybe he resides in whatever castle his followers dreamed up, feeling no need to visit the earth. Perhaps he had abandoned humanity, as he did with his brother. Or he rules above the sky like the grand overlord he dreamed to be. They had once loved one another so deeply. Envy or wrath were foreign to them, and they ruled their people kind and fair, side by side. That was until the day the brother of the sun felt abandoned and became somebody else, chose a new name and decided to regain the favor of humans after he had been disregarded. The god of the moon never dared to follow in those footsteps. He'd given up on that idea. He did not want to be something new. He only yearned to be himself, by his brother's side once more, helping people, answering prayers, receiving offerings and granting blessings. But that was impossible, even if people began believing in them again. Things had changed. What had been done could not be undone. I'm sorry. That story always gets me rambling a bit. But so far nobody's ever bothered to listen. Thank you, stranger. There definitely is something special about you. Never lose that spark. Hold on to it, and don't let anyone take it from you. Oh, look. The meteors. It's starting. Oh. Hello, once more, stranger. I didn't think I'd meet you here again so soon. One would assume you'd have learned your lesson by now. No, I don't mind. The company is quite nice. I just didn't expect it. Most people don't come here often, and when they do, I'm the last person they want to see. That's why I always stand by the far corner of the bar. But somehow, you still find me every time, no matter how invisible I try to make myself. Well, I suppose most of the guests don't want to pay me any mind. I could probably be dancing on the tables and they'd still act as though I'm not here. But I don't blame them. This town is not the only one that acts this way. I suppose I've gotten used to it by now. Blending into the background wherever I go. It might just be for the best. They must find people like me repulsive. Strangers invading their community and safe spaces. Like hungry beetles breaking into an anthill, ready to destroy their colony. If I'm not prey, then surely I must be a predator, a hazard to their safety. You, however, don't seem to have that kind of mindset. You're one of the few people I've met who didn't. Maybe it's because I only ever find myself in small, reclusive towns, where everyone tends to share the same frigid ideologies, and those who don't leave as soon as they can. Though, I doubt the bigger cities would make me feel any more welcome. I imagine it's just more loners, and if you're lucky, a bit less judgment. But in the end, it's the people who act this way, not the town itself. It's part of their nature. Back in the day, it was necessary to keep group morale high and be wary of outsiders. Being associated with the wrong individuals could very easily be your demise, while being around good people and staying together would secure the survival of the tribe. It must have stuck, somewhere deep down in their being, a testimony to times long gone, a past that most people forget about all too easily. Quite a few behaviors were formed in the earliest times of humankind, and no living person may ever realize just how many. All those little things that don't fully make sense, the ones that have become too normal to question, and some that seem much too obvious to even consider. People adapt, but for the most part, as a species, more is added rather than replaced or removed. The core will forever stay the same, forming similar thoughts and patterns, no matter how much time has passed, how many new things have been learned and implemented. And still, it's expected to behave as though the human being is fully equipped for today's life, despite everything suggesting the contrary. People beat themselves up for being stressed, dissatisfied, and unhealthy in a world that does nothing to accommodate their actual needs. Strange, isn't it, how humankind has developed from hunters and gatherers to lawyers and office workers, driven by a need for more, an urge to prove themselves, a hunger for development. With every passing era, people are forced to become more and more homogeneous, while at the same time fighting for their rights and recognition as individuals. It's painful to watch. Long ago, I started to think that humans know nothing about themselves. So far, I haven't been proven wrong. What's their fascination with making themselves suffer? And what for? To prove they can. To optimize the gain of those high up. To destroy themselves entirely. I mean, certain things make sense to have. But not in the way they're being treated. How long will it take for people to realize? And how much longer for things to actually improve, if they ever will? People are much too focused on their own limited lifespan to see the patterns of damnation, the downward spiral they're trapped in. Usually, only those who are faced with misery recognize it, and the rest dare not think about it too deeply. It's always been that way. Another ancient mechanism of self-protection, as people worry that associating themselves with the problem will draw it into their life. It makes me wonder, how is that fair? Ignoring obvious issues, handing them over for the next generations to handle. What did we do wrong? Oh, sorry. I'm rambling again. Well, you kind of had it coming. So far, every time we've met, I lost myself in a topic and monologued about it for far too long. And still, you keep coming back for more. You are strange. Do you really enjoy hearing me speak that much? I guess I'm so used to talking to myself without anyone listening that I just forget you're there. It wasn't always like this, you know. There was once a time when people cared about me, when I had family. People who heard me, made me feel loved. Ugh. I used to be someone, but not anymore. I've become a nobody. Nothing but another stranger passing through. Somebody you avoid today and forget about tomorrow. I can't remember the last time somebody genuinely smiled upon seeing me again, or someone being interested in what I had to say, or even hearing my own name uttered from the mouth of another. I've come to realize that a name is so much more than just a word. It's an identity, the link to a whole being, made up of memories and experiences. Hearing somebody call it is like reaching into the deepest depths of your being, like somebody holding your beating heart within their hand. A connection to your innermost self. And forgetting such a name is like losing yourself entirely. Not a single soul remembers who I am, who I was, and there's nothing I can do to change that. I want to be open with you. As much as I enjoy your company, I've been here for too long. It's time for me to move on soon. When you're somebody like me, you can't stay in one place for more than a few years at a time. And since I'll be leaving anyways, I might as well tell you my truth. You might deem me a lunatic, But it makes no difference whether or not I say this, whether you believe me. Take it as a metaphor, if you will, or perhaps the rambles of a drunkard. But a long, long time ago, I used to be a god. People used to worship me, pray to me every night, and now I'm nothing. A stranger at a bar, an outsider in a tightly knit community. Just another face to pass by and forget about. You see, the story I told you, it was my own, and you won't find it in any books of myths and legends, because by the time people had forgotten about it, neither pen nor paper had been invented. Language was barely developing back then, so there was no way of immortalizing it. I might be the only one who remembers. And sometimes I start to doubt if it even happened to begin with. Maybe I'm no fallen god after all, but only a victim of my own imagination. I have nothing to prove it, only the memories of millennia I lived, constantly running from myself. But whatever I am, doesn't really matter, does it? In the end, it doesn't change my situation. It doesn't make a difference. And to you, I won't be more than a drunken stranger either way. You will forget about me, or you will die, while I waste away underneath the pressure of this meaningless existence. I told you about how my former followers were forced to convert or die. And so they did. And my name died with them. My strength, my power, and my influence. I've become nothing more than a hermit, a meaningless shell of human flesh, abandoned by magic. You can't believe in something you've never even heard of, and you can't revere a dead god. I still remember one lovely youngling leaving us little offerings in a secret place after they had been forced to give us up. A quiet act of devotion to us and rebellion against their oppressors. But even that faithful young one eventually grew old and died. The last soul that believed in us. I kept them close to me for as long as I could when my power faded. But then I fell, forced out of the sky into a dark, cold world. A world that had already turned its back on me, pushed me aside to make space for new beliefs. For thousands of years, I have been treated like filth. I don't blame them. I'm not upset. I wish it didn't have to be like this. And I wish I understood why this is happening. Why have I been cursed to live this way? I used to be so strong, so bright. Everything that made me who I was has fallen off me like dried soil. And now there's nothing left but the raw dirt underneath. Nothing that shapes me, that holds me. Nothing that matters. What a strange feeling to lose yourself this way. Not even I recognize myself anymore. The longer I look into the mirror, the more that image twists, until I don't remember who I once was, who I am, until there is nothing left that defines me anymore. Sometimes I wonder, what's the point? If there was anything I could do to change it, I would, if there is a way to make it all stop. Never mind. Me and my brother. There is no need to pity either of us. We both made our choice. Things are as they are, and will be as they have been. Though, sometimes I wish I could see him again. A couple 100 years of togetherness is nothing, compared to thousands being apart. That hollow feeling in my chest, it never went away. You've listened to me for long enough now, don't you agree? Allow me to buy you a drink as compensation. What would you like? What are you doing here? Cookies? Is that normal? I'm not sure how to react. Nobody's ever brought me anything before. The last time anyone knocked on my door, they had pitchforks. To tell you the truth, I half expected you to flee the town after our last encounter. Or even the one before. I must have sounded like a mental patient. But somehow... Why do you keep coming back? I can't possibly be that entertaining to you. Curiosity killed the cat, you know, and I doubt I'll be satisfying enough to revive you again. You really should be more careful, stranger. For all you know, everything I told you could be a lie. A story I fabricated to lure in those curious enough to want to hear more. Or I might be telling the truth, whatever that means to you. Though, that doesn't mean I can't still be dangerous. Maybe I think that I'm being honest, having convinced myself of a delusion, a drunken madman lost in a world of fantasy. Either way, somebody as attractive as yourself shouldn't be visiting the homes of people they don't know, especially not alone. You really are strange. I must admit, there is something I enjoy about you. It's refreshing, but I'm worried nonetheless. Oh, do you want me to invite you in? I'm sorry. Please come inside. You might be the first real visitor I've ever gotten, though it feels a bit odd to admit that. But as I've said before, most people tend to avoid me. You're the first in many ways. Or at least the first in a very, very long time. You came to hear more, didn't you? Itching to know the secrets of a soul like mine. There's not that much to it, to be honest. I can barely remember all that happened in my time. It all begins to fade into one long memory after a while. Only a few are still clear and distinct from the rest. It must have been the very early days, right after I fell. I didn't know of my immortality then. I met someone, much like you in many ways. a bright and curious soul, eager to welcome me into their life. We spent much time together, and I watched them grow old. It took me much too long to realize my body was left untouched by the currents of time, and life was much shorter compared to now. The moments we had together now feel like less than the blink of an eye, and there was nothing I could do to change the outcome. Nothing to keep them safe. Ugh, I miss it. The feeling of meaning something, having power, not being alone. Having somebody by my side who understands, anyone I could talk to, being able to create things, to help others, to see the smiles upon their faces as my blessings improved their life. Not having to worry about the mortality of those around me. For far too long I have wandered in the darkness. It's a lonely endeavor, one I would never wish upon anyone. The only other person who might still remember me is my brother, and I haven't seen him in an eternity. Who's to say he hasn't forgotten about me yet? Maybe he's long moved on, invented himself anew and left all else behind. Who am I to expect him not to? There's nothing more I can do, except wish it were different. Remembering who I was won't bring me back either. Maybe it's time for me to finally accept it, to recognize what I've become, how the world has changed around me. The people I once loved are long dead and buried, turned to dust within my hands, as did everything me and my brother have built together. We are nothing but a distant memory, lingering within my mind. A final claw, holding on to consciousness, desperate not to fade away. Or maybe we don't need to be the same. Maybe we can reconnect, be different, together. But I can't say if that would fix anything, if that would make a difference at all. Even for a former god, turning back time is an impossible thing to do. A distant dream. A frivolous fantasy. This loneliness is tearing me apart. This feeling, like a hole within my chest, gnawing at me from the inside. One day, I might be brave enough to try again, to pray one final time. And then, either I must learn to let it go, or I get what I have been yearning for. It's been far too long that I've lived in between, not able to move on, nor embrace it. But it still feels like I haven't lived out my punishment. Would I be allowed to try again, even if I'm not ready? Part of me is tempted to do it right now, one final time. What do you think, stranger? Should I leave it be, or... One last time. Would you mind staying by my side as I try again? Just so I won't have to be alone when I fail. Thank you. Share. If you're there, please Let me speak to you. Ugh, I don't know what else I expect. Oh. What? Just... share?
And so we meet again, brother. What a surprise to see you alive after all these years.
You... this whole time... why did you never reach out to me?
Quite frankly, I assumed you had died after you last attempted to contact me. And back then, I simply could not face you after what you had done.
What I had done? You were the one who left.
Do not act as though it was my own choice. I gave you the opportunity to come with me, yet you declined. You wanted to stay, because you loved those feeble humans more than you could ever love me. Even now, you have another mortal clinging to your sleeve.
Of course I loved them. They were our responsibility, ours to shepherd. But you abandoned our people. Abandoned me. You left us behind to die.
Your endeavor was senseless. There was nothing we could have done to save them. I acted in an attempt to protect us so that we could persevere, start anew and form a different group of followers. How should I have known we would not perish? You act as though we had nothing to lose, as though I was being selfish, when in reality, all I did was an effort of staying alive. And it is not my fault you would have rather died by their side than rebuild what we had.
How can you say that? These people loved us, and we let them down. We had no right to leave them behind. I don't think you understand how they must have felt. The fear, the pain, the hopelessness. They weren't just followers, things that worshipped us. They were entire beings with complex thoughts, hopes, and emotions. They were like us, scared, forsaken.
There was no helping them. We were beings worth considering too, were we not? You were willing to let your life end with theirs, despite it bringing no benefit upon anyone. A fool, and nothing less. That is what you were, what you still are.
When did you become so heartless? I didn't feel right to keep going without them, to act like it had never happened and find a new group of devotees. I couldn't just pick up another face like it's nothing, make up a whole new identity.
You are so stuck in your ways, too attached to what you had, to see what could have been. You act as though I was deceiving anyone, as though I was lying to humans to regain their favor, when in reality, all I did was present myself and my abilities to new mortal souls. They chose to worship me, to give me a new name, and I accepted it. I had no other choice to secure my own survival. You may not have cared for your life, for us, but I did.
Of course I cared. I loved you more than anything. But our only purpose was to protect those who believed in us. And we failed. I couldn't live with that failure etched into my soul. It felt wrong to leave them behind. The Cher I knew would have died with me. With them. I don't understand what happened to you after we started growing apart.
You know nothing about me. You didn't then, and you still don't. I saw more use in staying alive, helping new people. Humans die all the time, and yet we still kept blessing their offsprings happily. What difference does it make if they aren't of the same blood? Our purpose was to protect our devotees, whomever they may be, and whatever name they may call us. So was it truly that wrong to do what I did? Perhaps you were the selfish one, unwilling to bless anyone but those you knew. And now look at you. What good did it bring upon you? Stuck in a mortal shell for millennia, unable to do anything but pray for my forgiveness, while I still had the tools to bless my believers. I grew stronger while you simply wasted away.
Cher, what happened to you? In all this time of living, the only thing that you have grown is distant. I haven't felt your presence ever since you left. Your love, your blessings. Not once have I felt your touch upon the earth.
Do not call me by that name. It is dead, as are you. Or at the very least you should be.
Cher, please. Were we not two halves at the beginning of all? We are one. We should not be torn apart like this. Why have you forsaken me, brother?
That was a long, long time ago. Things change. They evolve. That is nature. I refuse to turn back. You made your choice then, as did I. I've had enough of this. Enough of you. Not even my own brother is allowed to come into my home, spit upon the very thing I have fought to build and uphold after he abandoned me.
You stabbed me.
I cannot take it anymore. The fading image of my brother, twisted within your features. Nothing but a ghost, clinging to a world he should have left thousands of years ago. You are but a shadow of your former self, bathed in hatred and obstinance. Through this holy blade, may you find the peace and comfort that you seek, Mark.
You... Why? I'm sorry.
Do not act as though you know anything, human. You know nothing. Not about me, neither about him. Do not judge us on what you have seen today. It was necessary, even if I wish it had not been. I wonder if there will be an afterlife for a god, a place where he may experience his happiest moments once more. Even if there is not, relieving him was for the better. You, too, must have noticed the exhaustion within his eyes. No being is meant to live among humans for as long as he has. You may not understand what I did, or why, but I do not need to justify my actions to a mortal soul. Hate me, if you will. It makes no difference. I hope you understand that I am not leaving you alive as torture. No other soul may remember him as he was, the person he had become. I cannot let that memory fade away just yet. Ending your life would be blasphemous. Perhaps you will forget what happened in only a few years, or you will wake up, believing it to have been nothing but a dream. Still, knowing that his memory perseveres, if only for a moment. It gives me a sense of peace. Though I did what I had to, that does not mean I am happy about it. I have never been a bloodthirsty god, nor a vengeful one. But now it is time to go back home, mortal. May the world be kind to you.
A big thank you to the apostles listed on screen, whether they support through Patreon, YouTube memberships, or both. If you would also like to support this channel, there is a link to the Patreon in the description, and the join button for the YouTube membership should be next to the channel name. Though, even a like or a subscribe is more than enough. Thank you again, and I hope to see you next time.